gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? The show starts in 3, 2, 1, go.
Good morning, CaneSport. It's November the 30th, 2023. I'm Gary Ferman, the publisher of CaneSport.com, joined once again by our recruiting maniac, Stephen Wagner, who's been working his butt off on something that we are about to talk about here. And as we discuss the news of the day, and Matt Shodell's still on. I'm going to be honest, I gave him sick leave. I did. I felt bad because people were giving me a hard time on the YouTube comments and stuff, that Matt was legitimately sick the other morning when I made him get up at 4:45, despite supposedly having no voice and coming here and doing the show and doing his service to the people. And he sat here for a 30-minute show and didn't say one word the entire show. And I caught a lot of flack, Stephen, because I was the boss with no mercy. And I did not give him a sick day, and I made him come do the show. So today I feel guilty. Yesterday, I canceled the show altogether. Today I felt guilty. I said, you know what? Steven's got this. We got a lot of recruiting to talk about anyway. So Matt, sleep in on this Thursday morning. God, I'm losing track of my days. There's so much going on. Sleep in on this Thursday morning. Steven and I got the show. So here we are. And Steven, last night, 7 p.m., okay, the news hit in a big-time way for the Miami Hurricanes. Justin Scott, the 5-star defensive tackle, the guy that many believe is the top defensive lineman in the entire United States of America, decided, well, he actually did something we thought he was going to do 4 months ago or 5 months or whatever it was. He decided he wanted to be a Miami Hurricane and not an Ohio State Buckeye. And there's a whole backstory to this, but he calls up Miami. He says, I want to flip my commitment. It took him about a half a second to convince Miami to take it. And voila, now Miami has Justin Scott on its commit list. Miami is in the top 10 of the team recruiting rankings with a whole 3 weeks for Mario Cristobal to go work more magic out on the trail. Steven, suddenly things are looking really good in Coral Gables. Your thoughts on it all?
Man, this was the commitment that Miami needed more than anything in the world. You talk about a whale of a commitment. Truly, the only flip I could think of that would get more Miami fans out of their seat than this would be if Miami were to somehow flip Jeremiah Smith away from Ohio State. That's how big I think this commitment is for Miami. And yeah, you're right. We did think this was going to happen a long time ago. I actually put my crystal ball in for Miami way the heck back in May. I had to dig through and find my May 30th story in my crystal ball for that, so that the RPM was saying this whole time that he was heavily favored to land at Miami. So, maybe
Steven. What's the stock market going to do for the next 6 months?
What can I say? Warren Buffett don't know shit. But Miami, man, this is the moment that Miami has been waiting for, especially in a class that was supposed to have a very heavy focus on elite interior defensive linemen, the same way last year's class had a very, very specific and concise focus on elite offensive linemen. Whenever you saw them land guys like Samson Okinola and Francis Malagoa, well, this year it looks like Justin Scott's hopefully going to get the ball rolling on that side of things. I actually looked this up, and you know who Justin Scott reminds me just a ridiculous amount of? Leonard Taylor as a high school recruit. As a high school recruit, he reminds me a ton of Leonard Taylor. Justin Scott is 6'4", 315. Leonard Taylor right now, I believe, is like 6'4", 295, I want to say, somewhere around there. So very similar in size. Leonard Taylor was the number 9 overall recruit in the country and the number 2 defensive lineman. Justin Scott is the number 10 overall recruit in the country and the number 2 defensive lineman. And both were 5-star recruits in 3 out of the 4 major recruiting databases. And there is just really unanimous consensus love for Justin Scott pretty much everywhere in the country. Everyone recognizes just how big of a flip this is for Miami. And yeah, now Miami's back in the top 10 of the recruiting rankings, and it's starting to look like there's a very real chance that Miami could finish with another top 10 class. You know when the last time was that Miami finished with back-to-back top 10 classes? 2007 and 2008. I was in second grade and third grade. I had no idea who Randy Shannon was. I had no clue who that man was. I barely knew who someone like Jerry Jones was. I had no clue who Randy Shannon was. But that goes to show just how long it's been since Miami recruited at this level. And yeah, for all the flack that has been thrown around about, some of the commits that Miami has taken in this class, and, kind of this whole deal of, everybody's an expert, everybody suddenly becomes a recruiting expert once you look at the recruiting rankings. This is something that I think should get a lot of fans really, really fired up, because I don't think there's a single person in America that would be saying, man, this isn't exactly what Mario Cristobal was brought here to do. Mario Cristobal was brought here to land whales, and he just landed a really freaking big whale, and he flipped him away from a really, really big time program.
Yeah, and Scott's he's 6'4", he's 315 pounds. He's a great basketball player. So athletic, and has been at the top of the rankings for defensive tackles all through this recruiting cycle. And like we talked about, it looked back in the summer like Miami was going to get his commitment. It looked like a slam dunk to us. Steven puts in the RPM. I might have done the same. I can't remember. It was so long ago. But there was no doubt in our minds that Miami was going to land Justin Scott. But on his recruiting visit, something happened. And for whatever reason she had, his mom decided that she didn't want her son to go to Miami. And she put a wedge in this growing relationship that had built with the Hurricanes. And he committed to Ohio State when it came time to announce, while really wanting to go to Miami all along. And so there's a backstory to all this. Miami's got a internal recruiting guy that helps out with defensive recruits. His name is Steven Schrum, and he stayed in touch with the mom through the whole process and kept working the mom. So did Joe Salavea, the defensive tackles coach. They never gave up on Justin Scott because they always felt like they were right there. They just needed to convince mom to let him come to Miami. Well, now here we are at the end of November and 3 weeks before signing day, and mom finally relented and gave her son the pledge that she would support him going to Miami for college. And just a great job of recruiting by the whole organization. So many people involved, but to hang in there after the disappointment of him committing to Ohio State, is just a tribute to the doggedness that Mario Cristobal brings to recruiting, and it filters down to everybody that works for him. And this is why you see him have success. It doesn't matter whether he's at Alabama, Oregon, or here at Miami. Mario's going to find a way to have success in recruiting. Nobody's going to outwork him. Nobody's going to outthink him. And he's not going to get every kid, but by the time you're done with a recruiting class, it's probably going to be somewhere in the top 5. More than likely, Steven. So they have sights on the top 5. What do you see as the path now here in the last 3 weeks to get up there? Ellis Robinson, very highly ranked, obviously, still looking like he's pretty locked in with Georgia. Jeremiah Smith, top player in the country, elite wide receiver from Hollywood Chaminade. A guy that Miami just has to get. Like you just can't keep losing players like Jeremiah Smith, but it's looked like he's going to Ohio State all along. Does Miami have a path, Steven, you think, with either one of those guys? And how do they get in the top 5 now in these last 3 weeks?
Yeah, right now, I kind of feel like Miami probably has a little bit of a better and more clear path with Jeremiah Smith than with Ellis Robinson, in large part because I'm a little bit more confident in the relationships that I feel like Miami's offensive staff has built with Jeremiah Smith. Not to say that the defensive staff hasn't done an excellent job recruiting Ellis Robinson, because they really have. But Jeremiah, I truly do think that, there is a part of him that really has that interest in playing for the hometown school. His family's always watched the Hurricanes. He watched the Hurricanes growing up. That's, Miami's a program that they've always monitored. They've always kept their eye on. He's visited Miami more than anyone else, and rightly so. I mean, Miami's like a 35, 45-minute drive down the road from him. I mean, you're not going to get much closer than that, as far as, like having a college in your own backyard. So I do think that this path would kind of lean on the whole narrative of, keeping the hometown kid home and being able to come to Miami and, be that kind of superstar and, or be that kind of local superstar. And yeah, I had a chance to speak with his dad a while back, and he said very candidly, one of the things that Miami is really trying to talk up is NIL opportunities, and the kind of NIL opportunities that, not necessarily he would get, from a collective or anything like that, but the NIL opportunities that you have in a massive economic market like the city of Miami, and in markets like downtown Miami and in Coral Gables. I mean, if you've ever driven around Coral Gables, that that's not exactly a poor person's area. And that there are definitely going to be some people who are willing to shell out a pretty penny. I mean, who's to say he's not going to get an NIL deal with, like a local Range Rover dealership or something like that? I mean, for God's sakes, if Ohio State recruits can get NIL deals with Ford dealerships, Jeremiah Smith can get an NIL deal with Range Rover. That's definitely I think kind of the elephant in the room that, Miami is being very black and white about. Like, hey man, like collective and stuff like that aside, you have a chance to monetize yourself in an absolutely ridiculous way. And what's really going to help on that is this whole idea of the local hometown kid deciding to stay home, because that's a narrative that doesn't really ever get old. It doesn't matter if you're in, bad word I'm not going to say, but if you're in the middle of nowhere in Louisiana or Alabama or Georgia, or if you're in Miami or New York or Chicago or Los Angeles, that whole idea of the hometown kid staying home and becoming a superstar and leading his team to success, that's a narrative that never, ever, ever gets old. And I think that everyone's kind of aware that, that's definitely something that they're going to continue to play up. Now, I'm looking at the recruiting rankings right now. Miami's currently in 9th, Oklahoma's 7th, Miami is 9th, Oklahoma is 8th, Texas is 7th, Oregon is 6th, Alabama is 5th. Now, Miami is not trailing Oklahoma by very much. They're not trailing Texas by very much either. You kind of think with one more blue chip commit that Miami might be able to go ahead and jump possibly Alabama or Texas. And when I say whenever I say blue chip commit, I'm probably talking about someone, within the top 50, top 75 range, somewhere around there. Then you look up a little bit ahead of that. Alabama's in 5th, Florida's 4th, Florida State is 3rd. And then you have Ohio State and Georgia, who quite frankly are just kind of recruiting at a totally different level. I think Miami is another whale away from being able to really compete with Florida State and Florida in this year's recruiting rankings in order to be able to really secure a top 5 class or secure a firm place inside of a top 5 class. I think, Ohio State and Georgia, they've kind of just recruited at a totally different level this fall. But I also think, one of the things that I kind of noticed was whenever Miami's overall class grade rose following Justin Scott's commitment, Ohio State's also dipped, because when Miami gained a 5-star, Ohio State lost a 5-star. So who's to say, maybe if Miami does flip a guy like Jeremiah Smith, who's to say they're not going to continue to climb? But I think if Miami lands, one more, real whale of a prospect, like maybe another 5-star, I think that then they're going to be right there with Florida State and Florida. I think if they land, another recruit somewhere in the top 50 to top 75 range, all of a sudden you're going to be rivaling Oklahoma, Texas, Oregon, and Alabama.
obviously Jeremiah Smith would have a great opportunity with the Miami Collective. There's no doubt about it. Would probably get the best NIL deal coming at Miami that has been written yet, including Tyler Van Dyke. But you're so right about the other possibilities. I mean, this is a guy that from minute one, becomes one of the biggest stars probably in the city, in the city, right there with Jimmy Butler and Tua and I don't know about if I would put him on the level of Tyreek Hill at this point with the crazy stuff that guy's doing. But the bottom line I'm making is he becomes a big time name in this market and probably would get other NIL opportunities beyond what he would get in Columbus, Ohio, where he's just another guy. Like they got a lot of guys like Jeremiah Smith at Ohio State, and it doesn't mean they're going to win more or not. They're not winning more this year, but the point is that there are great opportunities for him to stay home. I think one of the keys here in the next couple of weeks, Miami has to land one of these elite quarterbacks. You land one of these couple of elite quarterbacks where he knows his freshman year is covered with an elite quarterback, and then you're going to go recruit other guys as his career moves forward. I think it's got to be very appealing for him to come. I think you could also see guys like Brandon Inniss want to come back home, who's not really getting much done at Ohio State. So there's a lot of things that could shake here in the next few weeks to Miami's benefit. And it's going to be very interesting to see where they end up with Jeremiah Smith. But we got a lot of recruiting stuff on the website today, in addition to all of the Justin Scott coverage from his flip and how it affected the team recruiting rankings. We also have a story on another Chicago product, a 4-star edge player by the name of Marquise Lightfoot. And Stephen, the thing that I thought was so interesting about that update, he's been committed to Miami since early July. Ohio State's tried to flip him, USC, Illinois, among many others. But this guy never wavered. He has been solid 100% with the Miami Hurricanes from day one. And I think, again, it's a tribute to the coaching staff at the level of recruiting that they're showing with some of these kids.
Man, I really think it's a tribute to Jason Taylor more than anything, because Marquise Lightfoot, one of the reasons why he's been so locked in with Miami, so gung-ho about Miami, is the idea of being able to be coached by Jason Taylor, by a Hall of Fame edge rusher, really appealed to him. That stood out to him in a really, really major way. That resonated with him. And it's exactly what Miami's coaching staff was kind of envisioning would happen whenever they promoted Jason Taylor to co-defensive lines coach, or to the co-defensive line position. Because, from a recruiting standpoint, if you're if I'm a 5-star recruit and I'm sitting here on my couch and, I see Jason Taylor is calling me, trying to recruit me, at the very least, I'm going to have that conversation. Miami was hoping, having Jason Taylor on the staff, it's at least going to start conversations. It's at least going to get your foot in the door with maybe some of these 5-star prospects that, you're not totally certain otherwise if you really would have been able to have as great of a shot with them. Marquise Lightfoot was just one of the guys that Miami was able to really seal the deal with. And you remember back in the spring, Dylan Stewart was coming to campus. They got Colin Simmons down to campus. They were getting a lot of whales. Marquise Lightfoot is just the one that happened to stick. So really, I think this ultimately comes down to, Mario Cristobal's kind of vision for Jason Taylor and the impact that he would have on recruiting. I would say that, this is really a prime example of what Jason Taylor can be in recruiting, even if, you don't have to do something like blow up a kid's phone 24/7. I mean, is simply having that name on your staff really is going to be enough with some kids. Marquise told me a few times over the summer, who would you rather be developed by at the college level than a Hall of Fame edge rusher himself? And I think, this is exactly what Miami's been hoping for. And I think Marquise is really, really excited to come down to Miami. His coach even called them a match made in heaven.
Yeah, and it's defensive line day. We also got a story on 3-star defensive lineman Dalen Russell. He's one of Miami's first commits in the 2024 class, and from Miami, Christopher Columbus High School. And we get his thoughts with signing day around the corner. And we also have a story today on a guy that's one of my sleeper recruits in this class, a guy that I think is just going to be great. That's wide receiver Nikar from Moultrie, Georgia, Colquitt County High School. He's a 4-star. Kid's got crazy skills, and we got an update with him today that you'll be sure to want to check out, as well as a story about another 4-star receiver. This one's St. Thomas Aquinas receiver Chance Robinson. Ohio State, funny, Miami's stealing recruits from Ohio State. Well, Ohio State's been trying to steal recruits from Miami also, and they made a run at Chance Robinson. And at the end of the day, he said, well, that was nice, but thanks, but no thanks. I'm going to remain Miami Hurricanes. So that was a great thing. And Stephen, I think that Chance Robinson thing is really significant in this recruiting cycle because it showed that the coaches could fight off a threat from a legitimate school. It's one thing for Miami to try to poach Ohio State's class, but when a school like Ohio State's coming and trying to poach Miami's class, there's legitimate fear that they're going to be successful. And Chance Robinson rebuffing Ryan Day and company, to me, was a huge validation and a real big deal.
Yeah, I think this was a particularly big deal because, think about this worst case scenario. Let's say Chance Robinson did decide he wanted to go ahead and flip to Ohio State. You would have allowed Ohio State to come into your backyard and poach two of the best receivers in South Florida and the country right from under your nose. Jeremiah Smith already committed to Ohio State. That's a guy that Miami, really does have to have in this class just because, the number one recruit is within a 45-minute drive of your campus. That is an absolute must land. And, obviously Miami is going to continue to treat that like a must land literally until the moment that pen hits paper. But if Ohio State were to come in and nab Chance Robinson too, all of a sudden that would be a very, very bad look for Mario Cristobal, especially because that was kind of the reason that Cristobal was brought into Miami. His reputation of an ace recruiter and sort of this, the idea and hope that both Cristobal and the administration had that you can really rebuild that fence around South Florida where every recruit in South Florida first looks to Miami and then they look at whatever their other options might be. Jeremiah Smith was definitely, kind of a kick to the groin, committing to Ohio State. And then, for the most part, staying fairly solid with Ohio State for a lot of the year, even though he's been flirting with other programs. But losing a guy like Chance Robinson too, I think definitely would have been a pretty significant blow to Miami, especially because receiver was another position that Miami really wanted to have some heavy focus on this year. And, right now, I think, Miami's receivers class is in a very, very good spot. You've got 3 receivers committed, all ranked within the top 125 on the On3 industry rankings. You've got Nikar, who really is going to be a do-it-all guy, hyper explosive, extremely fast. Really strong hands, tremendous body control. Then you've got, Chance Robinson, who's kind of a prototypical X receiver, a little bit thicker. And then you've got JoJo Trader, who, has been one of the biggest recruits in South Florida, really since he was a sophomore in high school. And, I really do think that being able to shore up a guy like Chance Robinson, I think it kind of allows this entire coaching staff to really take a breath, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Because now all of a sudden you look at the offensive side of the ball and pretty much everything's there. You have the offensive line is starting to take the shape of what I think Mario Cristobal kind of envisioned it would look like, or at least it's trending in that direction. Miami has recruited receiver well. They've recruited running back well. They've recruited all of the skill positions. They've loaded up on tight ends. Now, really, the last missing piece of the puzzle is going to be the quarterback position. And if Miami is able to to find, a really good or even an elite quarterback, you have to think with the amount of talent that they've amassed and the way that they've been able to go out and recruit locally, you have to think that Miami's offense is going to be in a good position.
Yeah, and we also have a story today on a defensive back from St. Thomas Aquinas, Chance Robinson's teammate, Ryan Mack. So check that out as well as along with our Tracking the Commits feature, where we have stats and highlights from all the top commits that are in this Miami signing day class. So a big day of recruiting coverage for you guys to check out today. On the football front, we do have a story. We continue our series of breaking down the position by position looks. And today, coming out of the season, and obviously, and it's the post regular season position by position breakdowns. Today, we take a look at the tight ends position, which was really a disappointment this year. And, hopefully that's going to get better. They seem to have some decent players there. Elijah Lofton coming in the recruiting class. I know they're very high on. So we'll see what happens. But this year was really a disappointment at tight end. That's one area of the football team and program that needs to get better. So that's going to do it for today for Good Morning CaneSport. Thank you so much for starting out your day with us. If you like this show, like this channel, hit your subscribe button, hit your like button. It helps us with the algorithms at YouTube and growing our audience. And I got a new special for those of you who are not yet subscribers to CaneSport.com. You can come and join our community and get 2 months for $1. You get your first 2 months for $1. You use the code CANES1, CANES1, and that'll let you to come in and check out CaneSport.com and see what we do every day. We really give it our all to make your fan experience as good as it possibly can be. So CANES1, your code, $1 for the first 2 months for any new subscribers to CaneSport.com. So for Stephen Wagner, I'm Gary Ferman. Thank you again for joining us this morning, and we'll see you next time, everybody.